Welcome, one and all. This is episode number 11 of Re-Education Camp. Although, Karen, I was thinking about it earlier, and I don't quite know if we are re-educating anyone or educating anyone for that matter, at least not on anything of importance. It occurred to me that this podcast is essentially a podcast about basic witches, about my grievances with the world and the system around me. And I'm extremely excited about today's episode because we are now officially into basic witch season because it is October the 1st. And this is that exciting time of the year where I find that October through December truly are the best months of the year. There's a lot to look forward to. There's a lot going on. Although, on a more serious note, I think one of the central themes of this podcast, and one of the things that drove us to do this podcast, was this theme that we are entering a new sort of serfdom. Us being the little people, the working class. And I think that would be a kind of a good thing to get into today on a serious note. However, before we even do that, we were talking right before we hit the record button on last week's episode. I was expressing how October is going to be a redefining month for me, how I'm really going to get my act together. And
new phase, you said, of structure and consistency.
Was that the quote?
Listeners, that was the quote. And I think that the listeners deserve a little bit of an update on this new phase.
Yes. Structure and consistency. I feel like I'm still in that settling in well, first of all, it starts with your attitude, right? It all starts with adopting a new attitude and really deciding, talking to yourself and deciding like, hey, listen, you've got to get your act together here. You've got to do what's right for yourself, both mentally, physically, spiritually, the whole bit. And it's only October the 1st. So I feel like doing this podcast today is honestly a good way, a positive way to kind of get in the right mindset towards adopting a new me and closing out this year in a strong fashion. Is that an answer of sorts?
I guess that's good enough. We just wanted a little update to see. I feel like I went on a bender yesterday with my I guess new phase, that I did not make any. I don't believe last week I made any proclamations to be entering any new phase of anything. So
no, you're smarter.
It's okay that I just ate a bunch of garbage, had a cheesesteak and half a hoagie, and just kind of went on a little bit of a binge. So I guess I need to also enter this new phase where I you also mentioned treating your body more healthily, which I try to do. I usually do, but every once in a while you gotta indulge. But I wanted to, you had mentioned something about how this October through December is did you say your favorite time of year? Is that how you said it?
There's a magic in the air from October through December. All the best holidays are in those months. You've got Halloween, of course, basic witch season. You've got the month of November, which obviously Thanksgiving and the WWE Survivor Series. And then in December, of course, Christmas. I mean, everybody loves Christmas. I'm truly excited about closing out this 2023, which got off to a bit of a rocky start, but I feel we're in that transitional phase, and that transition comes on October the 1st, basic witch season.
Well, I was just going to say that I think that, like you, I think this is the favorite holiday of MasterCard, Visa, Discover, Chase Bank, JP Morgan, Target, Walmart, Amazon, because of consumer spending. So I think there might be some kind of relation to that, because I think in some ways we as Americans I mean, we're really, it's what is it? Liberty, freedom, liberty, freedom, and the pursuit of consumerism at this point. So
There
it's
you go.
go on, yes. But
No,
go, yes.
I was just going to interject that I believe it was Jerry Seinfeld who basically said that if things don't make you happy, then you're not buying the right things. And I
He
think there's
meant,
some truth in that.
did he say that on the show or did he say that as a real person?
I think he wrote that. I think
He
he
wrote
said
that.
that in a book. I'm not sure
Okay.
where that quote came from, but he said something to that effect. And I think there's elements of truth in there because buying things, new toys definitely do give you that temporary sort of excitement and happiness that we're all sort of chasing as the human race. We're always trying to get we're always chasing the dragon, so to speak, and trying to get those serotonin hits. So I think that the consumerism definitely is a part of what makes October through December such a magical time for all of us.
Well, I just meant we were more like we were programmed to believe that these were the best times of the year because it's there's so much marketing and so much, just so much that is manufactured to make us believe that this is the best time of the year because, oh, you can do this, you can get that. But on the flip side, I do agree. From if we took out all of the marketing and all of the wizardry that goes on from our corporate overlords, if you just stripped it back to what it really is, it's a time of family, it's a time of community. Like those are truly, we've kind of corrupted and perversed everything that makes the holidays so magical without actually being, witchcraft and wizardry. But
These
just
months have
really,
a vibe, don't
yes,
they?
they have a
Don't
vibe. Yeah. I mean, my mom always says too, like growing up as a kid, while the reason why Halloween was kind of like one of her favorite holidays wasn't necessarily because of any of the dark arts or because of the costumes. For her, she didn't grow up in a very wealthy home. So Christmas wasn't as fantastic or exciting as Halloween was because Halloween, it was kind of the effort you put into it. You could walk all around all these different neighborhoods and if you spent hours and hours, you got all this candy for free. There wasn't really a sense of disappointment that came along with it when you aren't from a wealthy home. So I think in some ways, like Halloween is actually when you kind of flip it and you have a different perspective. It's kind of amazing how much the community gathers together to create such a fun time for for their youth. I mean, it's pretty amazing when you think about it, except for, when they had put anthrax in the candy or they no,
or
which
you slip a razor blade into. We're
yeah.
not advocating for
Yeah.
that,
So we're
but
not
you always heard stories of that growing up.
yes.
Like your parents would be like, "Okay, we have to check every piece of candy because we saw that news story in the
Yes.
evening
Yeah.
about is a
My
kid
parents were just
swallowing."
like, we have so many of them. Who cares?
Yeah, yeah. If one
We've got enough
goes,
kids. If
like,
one of them gets, yeah, it's not the end of the world. We're not
yeah,
checking all that candy.
come on, get out of
But
town.
but really most of that is just like old wives tales and it's really not true. But yeah, I think that that's kind of, and like you said, then you have Thanksgiving, which is the only, so many people have pointed this out and it's such a great observation that we have Thanksgiving, a day where we celebrate everything that we have, everything we've been blessed with, our family, our loved ones, and get back to the basics. And the very next day, Black Friday, is all about people beating each other up for a baby doll or a
A
video
Turbo
game.
Man doll.
Yes, we don't have
Sinbad.
enough. So it's interesting how we all kind of play a part in this in America too. But it's good to, like I said, to kind of get back to the basics. But this does kind of relate to the conversation that we wanted to have today about RFK Jr., who's been, as you mentioned, I think you can kind of introduce us a little bit better. But we had talked earlier and we said we really want to talk about RFK Jr. He's changing his strategy a little bit. But the conversation about RFK Jr. is so much bigger to the conversation financially, economically, that's impacting all Americans. So you could share a little bit about what's happening with RFK.
Yeah. So as far as what's happening with RFK Jr. himself, I think that he has realized at this point that running as a Democrat in the Democrat Party is just a futile process because the DNC is essentially, it's like trying to play a game with like a spoiled little child. You know how, if you were like playing a game with like one of your younger brothers or sisters, they would kind of change the rules as the game goes on to kind of
Well, actually,
benefit
that was
them.
my 50-year-old aunt who had no children and had 7 cats. She was the one that would do that. But yeah,
It works on the same principle for her too. That's
yeah.
what the DNC is. They're a spoiled little child that says, no, you can't run in Iowa and New Hampshire because if you do, then any delegates you win in those states can't go to the DNC in Chicago. That is literally the policy that they created. So
That they've created, which we have to explain to people, flesh that out a little bit. Like there are states that are used to being, you have a thing called a ground game in politics, where you are boots on the ground. You have people meeting, you are talking to people, as RFK Jr. put it. This is where you go and you talk to real people. You go to the salons, you go to barber shop, you go to the diners.
You go to Dave and Buster's.
You go to Dave and Buster's. They always get a little plug on our show, but you go there so you can talk to real people. And a lot of these early states are used to being courted that way by the candidates because they've always been the earliest in the voting process. So you pretty much, essentially, to win those states, you have to be on the ground. But the DNC is telling RFK Jr., Marianne Williamson, anyone that is making a challenge to Joseph Biden, that is not going to happen. Because if he rolls up in those states, which he has to clinch in order to win the nomination, all of his delegates will then therefore go to Biden, which is absolutely stunning which truly is the end of democracy. But go ahead. Yeah.
I know I can find some neoliberal friends who will try and justify why they're doing this and explain how it's actually
they should not
part
be
of
called neoliberal, just democratic radical fools. But go ahead.
Radical regressives. No,
yes.
but how does that make sense? If he sets foot, if either he or Marianne Williamson set foot in either New Hampshire or Iowa, those delegates will not be allowed to go to the DNC. I know they were trying to do that in Georgia as well, where if they win in Georgia, their delegates don't get to go to the DNC. So there's really no path forward in terms of clinching the Democratic nomination away from Joe Biden. So he's set to announce an independent run on October the 9th in Philadelphia. I believe that's a Monday. And I don't think it's going to be he's not going to be able to run as an independent, like with no party at all, because here's the deal with that. It is different in every state. Getting ballot access, it's almost impossible to get ballot access in all 50 states if you were running as a true independent with no party behind you. So I'm fairly certain that he is going to run as a libertarian because essentially they've already done all of the legwork with getting ballot access. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong here, but I think that the libertarian candidate for president is on the ballots in all 50 states. I do think that they have ballot access in at least 48 states, certainly enough states to get enough electoral votes to win. So that is the route I think he's going to go. And I'll tell you what, if the Libertarian Party is smart, and if they truly want to be seen as a serious party, they will get behind him. And well, I think his running mate is going to be Tulsi Gabbard. because he mentioned recently, I think it was on Theo Vaughn's podcast, how he was out for a walk with Tulsi Gabbard the other day, and they were talking. I think the libertarians, especially New Hampshire, really like Tulsi. So that is what I think the ticket will be. That is honestly the biggest third party ticket that this country will have seen since Ross Perot. And this is very significant because much like Ross Perot's run in 1992, I think that this run will have a significant impact on the outcome of the general election, because I believe that they can absolutely get 5% of the popular vote. That ticket, RFK, Tulsi Gabbard, Libertarian Party, and that's been the Libertarians' whole goal since I first voted for Gary Johnson in 2012. He was just asking for 5%, because if they get 5% of the popular vote, essentially this qualifies them for federal funding, I believe, and turns them into a more serious, formidable third political party. So if they do want to get that 5%, this is their only chance. This is the best chance they've ever had. So I say put all ideological differences aside and get behind this man if you're serious.
Well, and as you were talking about too, I think it's important for people to really focus and understand that by the DNC not turning on over those delegates, right? That is essentially subverting the will of the people, which is not inherently democracy. Democracy is, and you hear people say this time and time again, why exactly they're forcing these terrible candidates on us. We have the uniparty system. There's no way for another party to rise up. There's no way for the actual candidates, and you're seeing it. So I think that Democrats, if you are a Democrat, you need to understand that your will is being, it happened with Bernie Sanders. It's happening again with RFK Jr., where they are not allowing the actual people to decide the candidate. And also RFK Jr. explained something that was really important, because he said essentially, because Joe Biden is a shoo-in for the DNC, he'll really not make any appearances outside of really meeting with donors. And what exactly does that communicate to we the people? That the only people that actually matter to the Democrats, to Joseph Biden, are only the people with deep pockets. The will of the actual people is completely unimportant. And I think people need to understand that, because I think even RFK, I think his conversation, a large part of his conversation has been about the Democrats are no longer the party of the working people. And that's actually why Cornel West, I heard a conversation with him, why he was done with the Democrats. That's why he's running. And he said, I'm done with the Democrats because I no longer see a way that the Democratic Party is a party for the working person. And I think that's really important to understand. We're seeing a groundswell, a ground shift away from the Democratic Party being the party of the people. So it's kind of interesting to see. And also, I just saw a really great documentary series about I'm not sure if it was called exactly, but it's basically about the oligarchy in the United States. And this particular episode was covering Blackstone, who we kind of wanted to talk about. BlackRock, Blackstone, Vanguard today.
Fun company, really.
He was saying, yes, well, now they've actually separated years ago, but they started as like the same kind of group. But he was saying that 75% of Wall Street might shock people, but how would you think 75% of Wall Street votes?
Well, if you ask me now, I would say Democrat.
You're absolutely right. Yes. So that's kind of surprising. They said maybe the very, very top or certain people, maybe because of like maybe faith beliefs, which do people in Wall Street have any faith besides?
Do they have souls?
The almighty dollar? Do they have souls? Yeah. So maybe there's just like this little bastion of people that will vote Republican. But mostly it's Democratic. So I think people need to start understanding that, start waking up. This is not something I'm shilling for like the Republican Party. They definitely have some issues themselves, but
They're
I think it's just,
useless.
yeah,
Let's be honest. They're a useless bystander party who,
yeah,
sits back and wags their finger and does absolutely nothing
yeah.
because it's
And
a big
likes
club
to
and
be
we're not in it.
yeah, thank you. I'm sorry to even interrupt such a great quote, but also Republicans almost enjoy being the minority party. I think they kind of enjoy being just the contrarians that don't really have to, they can just sit there and be like, well, we don't agree with this, but what are we going to do? So it's interesting to see. But you were saying that RFK Jr. is pretty much the only candidate having this conversation about like Vanguard, BlackRock, and some of the biggest and State Street, some of the biggest financial players in the country.
Yeah, as to my knowledge, he has been the only candidate who has called out these companies by name: BlackRock, Vanguard, Blackstone, Larry Fink, who is the owner of BlackRock, I think. I mean, he mentions these people by name. And as far as somebody who I would trust to go in there and do a bit of surgery on these institutions and be able to maybe change the tax code and make it, difficult for these companies like BlackRock and Vanguard to continue strip mining the middle class. I mean, I think RFK Jr. is the only guy who knows the names and knows how to counteract this policy wise. Maybe Vivek has brought up these companies. He's the
I
only
was going to say
guy.
Vivek's the only other person that I would think.
Yeah. And with him, God, I don't know what it is. I just can't. Even though he's saying so much that I like and I agree with, man, something still seems off. Something just seems like
Yeah,
this
I kind of
billionaire,
agree.
young
Yeah.
billionaire pharmaceutical guy just pops up out of the woodwork and he's saying all these populist things that are resonating with the MAGA crowd and they're resonating with people who like RFK Jr. I don't know. It's just a bit peculiar.
Yeah, it is interesting. Vivek is an interesting candidate, and I agree. I think most of the things Vivek says, I pretty much can sign on to. I'm and in some ways, like you said, you're kind of taken aback because you're thinking, who is this guy and why? Yeah, that's exactly how I feel. That's exactly how what I'm thinking too. And he's just dropping these truth bombs again and again. So I'm not necessarily saying like I'm going to vote for Vivek. I 100% support him, but props to Vivek for at least speaking the truth. I think that that's kind of, at least we can maybe be a little bit, like you said, I was actually looking into his background yesterday. And I agree. It's kind of like you're a little bit like nervous to get on board with him because of his background, like you said, not even just his background, but like coming out of stage left or stage right. I don't know how to say that exactly, but I'm saying it wrong.
He
But he
came
just
out of left
coming out of the
field, I
woodwork,
guess.
left field, yes, coming out of
Yeah.
left field and just suddenly appearing, and it makes you a little suspicious about him. But he is saying a lot of things that I think most Americans can agree with. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens, and
Part of
yeah,
me is
truth will tell.
part of me is almost only following this just because it's so entertaining. Is this not the most entertaining, interesting, exciting election cycle in the history of the country? I mean, think about it. Like the guy who's in office currently, who a lot of people think was installed. I hope it's okay for us to say that. He is trying to
This will be our
actively,
last episode.
yeah, he's trying to actively imprison the prior
Opponent.
president, his
Yes.
opponent, his political opponent. He's actively trying to use the Justice Department to imprison him. Meanwhile, the other half of the deep state is trying to kind of shove this old man out of the way and bring forth I don't know if it's going. I don't know if it's going to be Newsom or Michelle Obama. I'm more in the Michelle
I'm
Obama camp.
I'm in the Gavin Newsom camp. I'm definitely in the Gavin Newsom camp.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be either one of the two. Part of me still thinks it's going to be Michelle because, again, the DNC is in Chicago. That's strategic booking, I think. Think about that. Having Michelle
Yeah.
Obama as your, champion candidate in the liberal city of Chicago, ready to take on the MAGA extremists. I think that's kind of the image that they're looking
Well,
for.
Michelle was just, see, here's the thing with Michelle Obama. She was just on a super yacht with Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks. And so you look at that. I don't even think Barack was with her. So you look at that and you sit there and say to yourself, okay, these big time Hollywood people are strategizing with Michelle how to go back and maybe put together some kind of, I mean, we've seen Spielberg do this in the past where he puts together some poignant film about how Michelle rose from the ranks to go to Princeton, was just, just a girl growing up in Chicago from a working class family, which props to Michelle. She really is that. Okay. So we can have a moment of intellectual honesty. I don't care what side of the aisle you are on. Michelle Obama really did grow up in a working class home and really did go to Princeton and really is a brilliant woman. And I think she was a really, really good first lady.
Her
Okay. I'm
husband
not,
was really in the CIA.
yes. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that Michelle Obama is extremely likable. I think she is a true American, um, just that American dream story. And yeah, she's a great candidate. But on the flip side, is Michelle Obama just enjoying her life and hanging out on Steven Spielberg's yacht? And she wants nothing to do with that. So,
She could still do that.
well,
They can wheel her out there, and she could still be the figurehead of this globalist new world order agenda, and be on the yacht at the same time. She could do like TikTok videos from the yacht, like as the commander in chief. I don't really think it matters anymore. You know what I mean?
yeah. Well, I think that Michelle Obama, there's a part of me that thinks that she just wants nothing to do with it. But at the same time, they might put like a gun to her head and say, if you
She's
don't do
into it.
this, yeah,
All these people are into it. Come on. I think that all these people are into being in like the utmost positions of
like that they
power.
want to be, that they want to have that place of power.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess she would, but I have a hard time. I feel like she just wants to go to the Beyonce show and dance. Like, I feel like
Hmm.
she just really doesn't, like, let's be real. Like, there's a reason why presidents, besides Trump, he's the literally only president who looked younger when he left off.
I don't know how that works, but I guess it's because he really gets off on all this. I think that he's
Yeah,
really
it just
like,
empowers
there's a
him.
sick part of him, I think, that is really deeply enjoying all of these indictments and political
Yes, yeah.
persecutions. I think he digs it.
There's no other way, but he's the only person I've ever seen that actually looks younger after being in the White House. Mind you, it was a year after he was out of the White House. So there was some time for him to like improve his health, relax not necessarily. I don't think he's been relaxed since 2015, but in his own strange Trump way that we don't understand. But Michelle, I do think that there is a lot. Here's the thing. There is an element to being the president that you are a actual public servant. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, I know that it
Is
doesn't
there?
seem that
Is
way.
there? I guess.
No, I just mean that like you have to put up with a lot of people. Like you have to put up with a lot of BS. You got to think about it's like the Queen or now King Charles. You got to go and Michelle's got to go and pretend like she cares about the lead in the
Oh,
pipes. You know
right,
what I'm
right. You
saying?
have to do the
Like you
figurehead
got to
stuff,
do,
the
yeah,
mascot
you've got to
stuff.
do a lot of that.
Yeah.
just,
Yeah,
just dealing with
that
all
is a
those
big hassle.
people. Then every day they're waking you up and telling you what's going on, that the Chinese want to do this. Then you got to talk to Zelensky. Then you got to talk to somebody in some country that you've never heard of.
You're right. This is a
So,
job for Gavin. You're
and
right. Yeah, because he wants to do it. Whereas, like you said, Michelle wants to be at the Beyonce concert or
it's here's my example. Meghan Markle. Okay. Meghan thought she was a princess. Meghan thought the job of a princess was just to wear cute clothes, hang out with Beyonce, just look pretty and go to these fun events. But she didn't realize that the role of a royal in the United Kingdom was to hang out with us plebeians.
the
Do you understand what I'm
scum.
saying? Yes, yeah. So she didn't realize it was like actual work where you had to get up and go make small talk and go listen to people cry about,
Oh,
whatever, some
I'm
kind of
already
problem
annoyed,
with their
honestly.
life. Yeah. Yeah.
It sounds most
So
unappealing.
that's why Megan didn't work with the royal family because she thought I get to do whatever I want. And then I get to go to all these fun events and hang out with all these super rich, fancy people. But what she didn't realize is that the job actually is just hanging out with a bunch of Britons and who don't have really great teeth and don't really have, no, I'm
I
kidding.
don't blame her.
I'm kidding. I'm sure that's where my family ancestry kind of actually were Irish, um, but you understand what I'm saying? So it's the same thing. It's the same kind of perspective that Michelle Obama has that Meghan Markle has. Right now, Michelle's just hanging out. Michelle Obama is the closest thing we have to royalty in America. And now she's a royal without any having, she just got paid like $750,000 to do a speech. I just saw an article about that. So right now, Michelle can just go get paid $750,000 to do a speech for like a hedge fund and hang out with rich people and hang out with Steven Spielberg on a yacht on the coast of Italy. Or she could take that job of the president and have to, go out to somewhere, Monterey City, and listen to these people complain about the mines no longer being
Or
open. Do you really think
Chendo.
Michelle Chendo, yeah. Like, do you really think Michelle wants to do that? Like, I have a feeling that so that's what I'm saying. Like,
She can get
don't
some
get
good
me wrong.
pierogies
Yeah, she could. Yeah.
and
Can you imagine
kielbasa.
her making some face like, she's like, ugh, like not into it. But what I'm saying is there probably is this dichotomy going on though in her mind where she also understands that if she takes the job, she's in the history books as the president of the United States,
The
the first
first female
female.
president, the first female black president.
Yeah,
And then there's the other thing. I think that if the deep state truly needs you for a role, you're gonna perform that role. At the end
you're
of the
going to
day,
perform. Yes. Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
absolutely.
you're gonna
Yeah.
get
You're
up
going to
there and
conform.
you're gonna sing and you're gonna dance. And I think, especially if the Republican nominee does end up being Donald Trump, I don't know if a Gavin Newsom can go head to head with him or not. I think that you almost need somebody, you need another celebrity. That's what I'm trying to say. And the closest thing to another celebrity is Michelle Obama that they have.
True. True. And well, the interesting thing, I think with Newsom, I think the reason why he would make a great candidate is because he is very unassuming. He does not, now, some people might understand that he has got some radical policies and that like California is not doing as well as they were probably before Newsom was in office. But like, so
He's
I
got
mean,
the wine
really,
mob vote, I think. Like
yeah,
the
yeah,
wine
the wine
moms
mob.
really dig
But
him.
exactly, that's what I'm saying. But he definitely gets up there. He has a family. He's not although he kind of has that like Batman villain hairdo going on, for the most
He,
part, he's easy on the eyes. Like he's not
he's
like
slick.
he's slick. He comes off as just normal. Like he really projects a sense of consistency, control, normalcy, just very even keel. Even if he's not necessarily a moderate, I believe he projects like just a level of competence, control, and an
He,
understanding. And I think that's just, yeah, I just think that he would be a good candidate because if people are just getting there and they're like, I'm so sick of everything. I'm sick of this crazy guy on the right. I'm sick of this, guy falling asleep at the wheel on the left. I'm sick of these radical policies. I'm sick of inflation. I'm sick of the millionaires and the billionaires or whatever. I think that somebody like
the
Gavin Newsom
millionaires and the
and the
billionaires.
billionaires. I think that Gavin Newsom comes along and he just looks like the kind of guy, he looks like a president. His family is a normal family, even though weird that his first wife was Kimberly Guilfoyle, who's
Yeah,
now dating Donald Trump
I was
Jr.
going to bring that up.
So wild, so wild.
That's odd.
But there's something about Gavin Newsom that I think is just very plain Jane and I think for a lot of people that's comforting. I think it's comforting to just see somebody that looks normal and probably talks normal and seems competent and looks like a president.
I don't think
Uh,
he looks normal though. That's the thing. He does look exactly like some sort of Batman villain.
yes, he
Just
does.
he's
Yeah,
got
a
that
little bit.
American that Patrick Bateman American Psycho look going on with
He
the
does
slick
have, that's a
back
good,
hair and
yeah,
the
that's a good
teeth, and
observation.
I don't know. Everything just seems very plastic to me and very artificial and very like this was a politician. Like if you were to go in and like construct the ultimate
Yeah, if you were
neoliberal
from central
politician.
casting, yeah, you're like central casting is like, we need a guy that looks like kind of like a crooked politician, but like mostly plays it straight. But yeah, you would have Gavin Newsom. It'd be like, here he is. Yeah, I get what you're saying, but for a lot of people, you have to think that is how they kind of vote. They're like, that guy looks like somebody that looks like a president. Like they just
Do you think that
like that's
there's
it.
do you think
And
that there's
talks well.
is there any chance at all that somehow Ron DeSantis ends up as the Republican nominee for president? Because that's really what the system is pushing for with this debate and everything. They're
The
debating for some
system
reason.
the
Why?
system is pushing for it. And I have to say, in Ron DeSantis's defense, I don't know if you heard the interview we did with Bill Maher,
I saw a
but
5 minute clip of it. Yeah.
yeah, yet again, like somebody that just talks like a president, talks like a leader, sounds right. He's got like everything going for him, and he's still like in fifth place. It's amazing. It really is amazing. Like I watched the
uh,
Bill Maher interview, and I said, I don't know who screwed up here, but like, and it's weird too because I don't really think that Ron DeSantis is even. I don't think he's unlikable. I don't think like people have this. There's now this language that's coming out or this story that he's like not charismatic, and I don't think that he's not. I don't believe that's true at all. He seems completely charismatic and not. He's not, but he's not Trump. You understand what
that's
I'm
the
saying?
whole
Like
thing.
he's
The
yeah.
At the end of the day, the story arc is not complete. I mean, what a lousy ending to a movie if like Trump just goes to jail or they take away the nomination for like that's a shitty ending to the movie. Like no, we've got to see this through. And that's what I
Yes.
struggle with when I think about, well, who would I actually vote for in a general? If there was like an RFK Jr. Tulsi Gabbard ticket on the Libertarian Party, would I vote for him or would I vote for Trump? I feel like I might have to go with my heart and vote for RFK Jr. because truly, at the end of the day, if you're asking me who do I genuinely think would attempt to change things for the better in terms of things turning around for the middle class in this country, I would say it's RFK Jr. Like that's who my heart would be with, especially if it is that Tulsi Gabbard ticket. Um, I don't know. What are your thoughts on him running as a libertarian? Because some people, I feel like some hardcore libertarians might take a look at RFK Jr. and
They're
think that
not
he leans a
really.
little more too on like the socialist side, which I think is ridiculous. I think he's just a old school. You know what our parents would probably think of like as an old school Democrat that was for the little guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I believe, like you said, it's not completely. I would have to know a little bit more about his actual policies, but like you said, I think the importance of RFK Jr. is just that he's interjecting these really, really big topics to the conversation. I mean, you look at I watched an a speech he gave that Forbes put up about, he was talking about Vanguard and BlackRock and State Street and just explaining like how they, now I think we should mention that BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street technically do not own all these companies. Like he starts to explain how they own like Raytheon, and they own technically the clients. If you have a Vanguard investment account, BlackRock, State Street, like a lot of these companies control a lot of money, and a lot of us might have our pension system or our pension or our 401k, IRA invested. So technically, you own a part of Raytheon. It's not necessarily BlackRock, but these companies allow you to vote as shareholders in some of these votes. But most people just don't even pay attention or know that they're even eligible to vote on some of these shareholder elections. So technically, BlackRock and Vanguard and some of these other, really, it's Vanguard, BlackRock, State Street, can say, no, 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 we don't own this big share in Raytheon. It's our clients that own. But essentially, BlackRock is just taking the money of the people and they funnel it to these companies to create value for their shareholders, their clients. But obviously, if their company owns that big of a share, even though it's the clients that own it, but if the clients are checked out and they don't even know what's going on, yeah, Larry Fink has a big say. We also have to remember that Larry Fink, when we had the bailouts and the restructuring, you could call it, of some of those big corporations during some of the big banks during the 2008 crisis, who did George W. Bush tap to handle that contract and take care of things on Wall Street?
Obama. Who did Obama tap?
I was it Obama or was it George Bush? I thought that tapped Larry Fink.
Well, wait a second. 2008.
Well, it
This
was 2008 because it was that Obama was getting elected into
okay.
office that year. Yeah. So he was
Okay, I
not in
guess you're
yet. It
right.
was George Bush. Yeah. George Bush chose Larry Fink of BlackRock to take care of that government contract, to restructure, and to help with the bail, to basically facilitate the bailout.
George
When the
Bush is a good guy though because he hates Trump. Just remember that. He's just a friendly. He paints
He's just a friend.
watercolors
Michelle
now.
Obama loves him. So
Yeah, exactly. Michelle Obama and him hang out together, and it's real cute. And they're at the ball game taking
just
selfies.
hugging
Like,
each other really
right.
oddly. It's a little weird.
Yeah, they're
But
good people.
yeah, and then in during the pandemic, Larry Fink also became the person to help with all of the restructuring, all the bailouts and everything that took place to help all of the companies and make sure that the banks were taken care of, and that all have, that job was given to Larry Fink. So when we hear like the oligarchs of Russia, I really think it's almost cute how like in American media, they're like, this Russian oligarch was on his yacht.
You're like, we don't have
Newsflash,
oligarchs.
like we don't have oligarchs. Like America is probably 10 times worse than Russia when it comes to the power of some of these key players and what an influence they really wield on America's just policies. And
And that's
so
fascism. That,
that's
I know that word is tossed around a lot
a
today,
lot.
especially by people who claim to be on the left, who obviously don't even know what fascism is.
Yeah.
Fascism is that corrupt merger between state and corporation, and we've been a fascist country in that regard, in the true definition, for quite some time now, wouldn't you say?
I'd say for most of our lifetime,
Oh
that
yeah,
has been the case. But
yeah. For all of our all of our existence on this planet, this has been a very we've had that corrupt merger of corporation and state. And again, to me, the candidate who is actually addressing that and talking about it in realistic terms is RFK Jr.
yeah, exactly. And if people would listen, so I'm sorry. You take I went on that tangent because I wanted to really flesh out and explain that people will say, like RFK Jr. will get up there and be like, BlackRock owns Raytheon. Well, it's not necessarily that simple. It's the clients of BlackRock own a large share of some of these companies. But we still see how that really doesn't matter.
Right. Doesn't it
But
all come out the same way
it
at
all,
the end of the day
yes.
anyway?
Yes. So also RFK Jr., you take the conversation he's having over there, and he, like I said, if you just look it up, like Forbes talks about, like Forbes has a lot of coverage of RFK Jr. to their credit. You take that conversation RFK Jr. has versus Joe Biden and Bidenomics
Come on, man.
trying to explain the economy, him trying to talk to the people, him trying to explain now his policies are helping you. Come on, like it's so clear and plain as day that if the average person could actually hear what what RFK Jr. is trying to communicate versus Bidenomics and Biden with his like whiteboard, any thinking person would vote for RFK Jr. because he's having an actual conversation with real truth and facts about what's really taking place in this country and why your dollar doesn't go as far, why you feel disenfranchised. Like he's actually addressing it. Whereas we have Biden, who's telling you with his whiteboard that everything's going to be fine. Well, of course, everything's going to be fine because he's
For
getting,
him.
yeah, for Biden, yeah.
For the elites.
Exactly. For the
Everything will be
elite.
just dandy.
For his donors, everything's going to be fine. Joe, who takes the Amtrak, who actually owns a mansion. I mean, this is just
Who grew up in Puerto Rico
who grew,
and went to the black church right after Catholic
who
mass.
also somehow grew up in Scranton.
Yeah. He was a breaker boy in the mines. He grew up in Scranton. He grew up. He was a lifeguard. This guy has done he's really a man, a very worldly man, a jack of all trades.
He's done so much in his 80 some years. But like I said, I think that it's at least we're at a point where we can have these conversations. But RFK Jr. is banned from MSNBC. He's banned from CNN. He can't actually get a lot of his messaging out to the average person. Now, we do have to say, to their credit, I think most Americans have done one or two things. They have woken up and they have started seeking alternative sources for their news and information, right? Like, I think that a lot of people get up in arms that it's like MSNBC, CNN. Nobody is watching them for the most part, right? Like people that actually want to be informed are not paying attention. But a lot of other people, I think, have just checked out. I think after COVID, it was just too much. There was too much news. It really was impacting your life in insane ways. And I think a lot of people have just tuned out the news completely. And they pretty much think like, all right, this was just a train ready to, roll off the cliff. And there's really nothing I can do about it. So I might as well just tune it out. And
the bus goes here and the bus goes there because that's what buses do. Remember that from Trump's interview with Tucker Carlson, where he was talking about Kamala Harris? That's my favorite.
Yeah.
I use that a lot frequently.
Trump is so fun. Are you the one that sent me Trump talking about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce?
Yes. Yeah. About how, he wishes them well.
Okay. So if it's really going to be Trump versus Biden, are you going to go for the guy who just wished Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce well but knows that it's probably not going to last? Or are you going to vote for Biden, who probably doesn't know who either of those people are? Which part, like, he's like,
which is
yeah.
ironic because
Show him a picture of Taylor Swift and he's like, is that Doris Day? Like, he has no
is that Gene Kelly?
Is that Gene Kelly? Exactly. Like, he's so out of touch with any sense of reality. It's almost, and I have to say, for most Americans, Biden being the president, I think gives you full permission to check out the news, because the leader of the free world is someone who walks into flagpoles, walks off stage, doesn't know what's going on. And yeah, at some point you kind of just have to sit there and say to yourself, well, I guess if this is the guy who's leading the country, this really all doesn't matter. Like,
I know some
really
deranged
just
people.
doesn't matter.
I know some deranged people who will tell you that despite Joseph R. Biden being obviously in perhaps late stage dementia, it's still better than Donald Trump, because Donald Trump said this to a reporter, or he threw a roll of paper towel. I actually heard that from somebody. How well?
Wait, who did he throw a roll of paper towels at?
This was during that storm in Puerto Rico. Remember, he was there and he threw the roll of paper towels. I actually heard somebody say that, use that excuse that it's, well, at least Joe Biden's not throwing paper towels. You know, he's there's an adult in the room. Like, so it doesn't even matter. People,
there is an adult, but he's like in diapers.
And by the way, Joe Biden, despite not knowing who Taylor Swift is, she's going to be out there. I believe that the next leg of her entire tour is going to be all about getting these kids registered to vote. Because you saw she put out that message already. She put out that message. It was like an Instagram story or something a week or so ago, stressing how important it is to get registered to vote. And you know who she's telling you to vote for. She's not going to be telling you to vote for Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis. You know, she's going to be out there. She's going to be out there campaigning for Gavin Newsom or Michelle Obama or whoever the hell it's going to be. So,
corpse Biden, corpse in chief.
Yeah, right. Or, God, do you think that he actually does make it to the finish line and it really is like Biden versus Trump round 2?
I do not think he is going to make it. Because I work where I look at the news every single morning. There have just been so many incidents recently. Every week, there is at least 3 to 4 incidents where Biden clearly shows his cognitive decline. And having, covering the news, covering most of his time in office, that was just not the case a couple of years ago. That was not, and I think, like, when you look at those diseases,
he looks 20 years older since inauguration.
He does look, that is also too. I have to look at pictures. I look through pictures a lot, right, for my job and I'll have to frequently look for pictures of Biden. And that was the first thing that I realized.
Job as a nurse.
Yes. Nurse, yeah. So I'm Joe Biden's nurse. But anyways, so I look at pictures, and that was the first indicator to me. A couple months back, I remember looking and I said, wow, I saw a picture of him from 2020 and versus 2023. And I thought, there's just no way. There is no way he is making it if this is what he looked like then and what he looks like now. I mean, go ahead, people, go on Google, pull up a 2020 photo of Joe Biden and compare it to this week. You will be blown away how much he has aged in those couple of years. Also, like I said, that was my first indicator several months ago. But recently, I've seen how many times he's having these hiccups. And I realized that this is just not, there's no way. There's absolutely no way he's going to make it. I really believe that. So it's just the truth. I can't. By the way, I mean, how do you do that?
I have to interject this because we're talking about Biden looking so different. I'm convinced, like 100%, there's not a doubt in my mind that that's a different John Fetterman. It's obviously a different John Fetterman. The
because
guy,
of the stash.
no, Karen, the shape of his head is different.
Okay.
Seriously, the
Okay.
entire shape of his cranium is different. I don't know what they did with the original John Fetterman. Remember when he went away for
For a couple
depression?
weeks.
Oh,
Yeah.
they got rid of whoever that guy. This guy even speaks more coherently. Have you heard this guy speak? It's
Yes.
so
Yeah. That's it.
he has the shape of his head is different. He talks differently. His face looks different. I don't even think he has the tattoos. I think that there was a clip of him where the
There's a,
tattoos were missing.
they cloned him. They cloned
This is a
Fetterman.
different guy. There's no doubt in my mind that
Really, we just
this
need to know what his wife is of. Giselle.
yeah, well they probably they have her, silenced. She knows what happened. I don't know
She'll
where
do
the
whatever. I will say this: Michelle Obama might not want to be president. Giselle would totally sign on
yeah,
board
she
for
would
that.
jump
She
at the
would be like,
top.
"Okay, yeah." She's not born in the United States, so she's not eligible. But she would definitely jump at that chance whatsoever. She would be like twerking in like some like 4-inch heels with like
I,
Zelensky, so who's also twerked in the past. So this is it, people. I mean,
uh,
really, like I said, you have to give it to people. Like a comedian is running the country where all eyes are on and could be the brink of World War III. We have a comedian running a war wearing fatigues when he comes to the United States and like dines with the top hedge funds of the world. Then you have Biden who's falling asleep literally at the wheel. Senators, Cory Booker just said he wondered if he was going to fall asleep on him. Like the senator came out and said that. You have him running things. I mean, you kind of understand why people just have had enough. They're just like, I can't take any more of this circus that is the world. It's just,
the thing is though, they have to stay engaged because their children are never going to be able to own a home otherwise. You know what I mean?
yes. Well, that
And
actually leads us back to our conversation that RFK Jr. has been emphasizing about how they're buying up a lot of these properties. He had a quote that I was trying to confirm that in 2021, I believe, or 2022, there were 700,000 less homeowners. Which I'm not sure if I would like to verify that, if anybody can verify that, but that is what he definitely said that.
Jamie,
That
pull that up.
Jamie, yeah,
We need that.
Shadow, pull that up.
Yeah, Shadow. I
Shadow.
don't know where Shadow went. She was
She's
under the
just,
desk.
yeah, she's playing with like catnip, and we're over here. We need important facts verified.
Yeah.
But, but, but we do see that these companies are buying up tons of property. And I remember during 2020 at the beginning, there were a lot of people that were maybe not the beginning, but some point in 2020 where they were like mad at the landlords, and then they said that they couldn't evict people. We had an eviction moratorium,
Yeah, the
which to this
CDC
day the
they declared.
CDC declared an eviction. I mean, this is a friggin' circus.
I would be a
But
renter if that was like in place forever. Like you just didn't have to pay rent, but yet they couldn't evict
why
you.
wouldn't it?
You could
Yeah.
just hang there. Like I'd
Oh,
rent again.
well, that only in certain jurisdictions, they only like in Berkeley, California, the eviction moratorium just ended. COVID was March
Wow.
of 2023, the 2020, the lockdowns began. It was like August or September. No, I believe it was September 2023. The eviction moratorium just ended in like Berkeley, California.
So you could have been chilling in Berkeley, California, just like
Really,
going to the beach, like surfing, like having like good seafood. Man,
they
damn.
actually, some of the landlords had a party that they could have evictions. When some of these like activists came and they crashed the landlord party.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. There's so many people out there. There's so many renters that were short-sighted. And at the time, I remember saying, wait a minute, this foolish renter, think that you're so smart and you're getting over on your mom and pop landlords so that they are going to lose that home because you're not paying rent. And who's going to go and come and swallow it up from them? But the corporate landlords could care less they have more fees, they have more resources, they have more lawyers than you will ever understand and more money than you'll ever see in your lifetime. And now you're not battling Joe down the block who's using, has 2 rental properties to subsidize his retirement. You have, not Larry Fink, this Steve, what's his name? Steve Schwartzman or whatever from Blackstone and all these other corporations who are coming in, and they could care less about you and your cancer diagnosis. They could care less about how your parents feel. They care less about anything. All they care about is making more financial opportunities for their shareholders vis-a-vis themselves. So,
you know what my idea always was? Like, if I became commander in chief, when you join the military, you have to take an oath, right? To defend, the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Couldn't a president, a commander in chief, sort of have a re-education meeting with the military and kind of explain how, in a sense, these entities who are preventing middle-class people from being able to own homes, in a way, they are domestic enemies. Wouldn't you say, in a sense, aren't they drifting?
They would
into
argue
that
that they are creating value for Americans.
But that's bullshit,
like, that's
though.
what they would
say. What I'm trying to say here is, why can't you use the military to go in and sort of break up these what many would consider to be domestic enemies that are actively in a war with the middle class, buying up all the homes, basically driving. If you're trying to drive like the entire middle class into serfdom, you are an enemy of the people and an enemy of the Constitution.
But the people that are ruling is this like an idea for Trump? Because it's certainly not what Biden.
I'm just tossing things around here.
Tossing things.
I'm not advocating for any sort of martial law or military dictatorship or anything like
Larry
that.
Fink.
I'm just simply stating that for these entities to have this much power to drive how many millions of people into a permanent renters class, I don't think the founding fathers ever intended for any entities to have that much power over the citizens.
No, this is exactly, and everything they do is legal, but I believe a lot of it comes down to us, the American people, where we give. And I understand it's really, really hard to battle.
Are we consenting to this? Is that what you're saying? That we're consenting to all of this?
We are consenting to this in a lot of ways. Like, I've always, I know people, I have people, just I know, and they'll be like, oh, I have my Wells Fargo account. And I'm like, what? I was like, they're the devil. Why would you have an account with Wells Fargo? And I really try to stay away. When I got my mortgage, I did it with a local bank. I mostly bank with a local bank, and I try like heck to kind of keep myself away from a lot of that. But I think a lot of it has to come down to education, and the reason why a lot of us don't even realize that the ground is being purchased from under us is because of the media, because they are completely complicit with these large corporations. I mean, it's all
this is fascism again. This all goes back to fascism.
And I think that's what RFK Jr. is trying to say. It's a corporate kleptocracy is what he calls it. And it's completely true, but we still have some freedom to kind of keep ourselves from all of this. The problem is too, that the government class just helps the corporate class to do all of this. They make it possible. And I think that's a lot of it too, that people don't, and you see with like RFK Jr., well, they're making it impossible for him to even become the candidate so that we never, ever, ever even hear about some of the things he's trying to tell the American people. And I get that it's really hard for us to do, but I think that that's what needs to be done. But you see that a lot of us Americans, like for instance, a lot of people are mad that because with inflation, a lot of corporations have raised their prices, right, to make record profits. And they're like, well, they're price gouging. And that's true. They are price gouging in some aspects. But I have friends that are realtors and they told me they'll go to list a home and they'll tell the homeowner, that's the seller, they'll say, well, your house is probably worth like $300,000. That's what you should list it for. And then the seller goes, well, the market's really crazy and I could probably get more. So why don't we list it for 350,000 or 330,000? So we have to understand, we have to look at ourselves and say, like, so I said to these friends, I was like, well, wait a minute. So when a corporation does that and charges you more for, water, or charges you more for apples, or charges you, price gouges X, Y, or Z, that's a problem. But when you go to sell, that's completely acceptable. And I think that we as Americans need to recognize we need to become moral people. Our government reflects who we are and what we've allowed. I know you just laugh. Yeah. You're just like, good luck with that.
If that's true, if that statement's true, which I believe it is, our government reflects who we are. What the hell does that say about this country?
Well, that's what I believe. Like that was my thought when Clinton and Trump were the candidates. I just thought, like, and why are we upset about this? Like, this is the best reflection of the country. I wanted to pull out. It's because we were talking about how they're trying to make us serfs, and I was reading. Hold on. I want to give a shout out to Hayek, who in 1940s wrote the book, The Road to Serfdom, who saw that this was coming, that the government would be more entrenched with the companies and the means of production. And he knew that the road to serfdom was upon us. And I wanted to read this to you. Hold on real quick. Hold on. I brought out The Rock of Ages. Ooh. So I was reading this the other day in Proverbs, and I think that it's really
the first Bible verse, the first Bible reading on the podcast.
Yes. Yeah. So I thought that this was a really important read, that it says, I actually read this aloud. I read my Proverbs every morning, and typically I'm by myself having coffee, or my husband's either asleep or he's on his way to work or whatever. But he was hanging out with me yesterday morning. So we were both having coffee. So I decided to read this out loud to him because I thought it was so prescient. It was so true. And I think it speaks to this generation. So it says in Proverbs 30, it says, there is a generation that curses their father and doth not bless their mother. There is a generation that are pure in their own eyes, and yet is not washed from their filthiness. There is a generation, oh, how lofty are their eyes, and their eyelids are lifted up. There is a generation whose teeth are as swords, and their jaw teeth as knives to devour the poor from off the earth. That's what I really wanted to read. And the needy from among men. So let me read that one more time. There's a generation whose teeth are as swords, and their jaw teeth as knives. And what would they like to do? They would like to devour the poor from off the earth and the needy among men. And I read that and I said, that's why I read it out loud. I was like, he needs to hear this. That is this generation. That is Klaus Schwab. That is John Kerry. That is these globalists.
Larry Fink, by the way, is in a prominent position on the World Economic Forum.
Yes. Like their aim is to eradicate the poor from the earth, which is not okay, but I really feel like you see this road to serfdom, like that is what it's talking about there. This was written by King Solomon. So, I mean, and that is the truth. Like this is that generation where they are seeking to make all of us serfs and to eradicate the poor. And, that's kind of where we are. So just happy, just some happy thoughts.
And that's why I brought
up for you.
That's why I brought up the fact that I think that, okay, if this is their goal, well, you're entering into that foreign slash domestic enemy of the Constitution area, and I think that a lot of citizens would agree with that sentiment. I'm not advocating for anything at all, by the way. I'm just throwing that out there. That to me, like if you were an enemy of this country and you were, trying to sabotage the West, these are the activities that you would be doing. Does that make sense?
And I think essentially too, like those, that is the will of a lot of kind of these like globalist people. And you have to understand, I think it's really important. Like I read in that generate this generation, they are wise in their own belief. They are righteous. I think that there's also a scripture that says every man is right in his own eyes. So I think a lot of like people on the right and a lot of conservatives and a lot of conspiracy theorists, like they look at George Soros and they're like, oh my gosh, George Soros, he's the boogeyman, he's the devil. George Soros, he has said that America is the greatest challenge, the greatest obstacle to world peace. You can look it up. It's true. He said it. And you have to understand, for George Soros, he doesn't think he's a bad guy. He thinks he's creating world peace. The World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab walking around in his nude beach, weird outfit.
I
He
like the
thinks
spacesuit.
that he is creating he thinks that he's creating more equitable, more peaceful, a better world. They do not believe, and what is serfdom? It's that the people cannot rule themselves. They have decided that we have done this experiment called America and democracies, republics, and they have determined that people cannot rule themselves, that they cannot be, that they will make decisions that are not good for themselves, even though a lot of these corporations have created systems and designed a world where, yes, things end up having bad outcomes. They've decided that this is no longer the way we need to have the world set up. And that if we cease to have borders, we need a digital ID, and we need to cease to have borders. We need to cease the common man making the decisions for the whole world.
No private ownership.
And you have to understand, for the George Soros and others of the world, that's a good thing. They think that they're doing good. They don't think that this is a bad. I really think that people get this idea that George Soros and others are doing this because, I'm not saying that there's no evil involved. I want to just make that little disclaimer. I'm not saying that
maybe
they're not
right.
evil. Yeah, maybe. I'm not trying to say that there's that evil does not exist, and that it's not that there is no evil that is part of this conversation. But I want people to understand that for somebody like George Soros, this is a means to a more peaceful world. This is a means to a better, evolved humanity. And for them, they think that that's a good thing. Madonna has a song that not everyone is going to the future. So you and I will likely not be there.
She's part of that whole crew as well.
Yes,
the whole
I
believe that she has made some dark decisions in her life, and I think that you have to make some dark decisions in order to be in that whole scene amongst the depopulationists.
You have to make some really bad decisions to have a face like that right now too.
Oh yeah, I mean, God, Roseanne Barr looks better.
Yeah, she does.
She looks objectively better than Madonna.
Yeah, who had that in their predictions, right?
In their 2023 bingo, Roseanne Barr is hotter than Madonna.
All right. Well, I'm glad that we brought this back to a better place of just a little lightheartedness, because this was some dark episode. This was some doom and gloom episode, but
yeah, well, it is basic witch season, and I think it was appropriate that we started off with something a little on the darker, more serious side, because these are important conversations that need to be had, and that's really the essence of the name of this podcast. It's all about that. It's all about how we are going to be sent to the re-education camps to assimilate, or else we shall be destroyed. And I'll tell you what, sometimes when I pull into that Publix parking lot and it's so crowded and there's people everywhere, I think, boy, Bill Gates, maybe he really is onto something. But
Maybe that generation is right.
how do I make sure that I'm in the group that's not depopulated? That's where we get into a bit of a sticky area there. So I have to stand firmly against the depopulationists in all of their deeds and preachings, etc., and so forth. But hey, yeah, this was a fun episode, Karen. I'm glad that we had these conversations. I think it's gonna, you know what though? We've got this is October 1st at the time that we're recording this. We're gonna have some fun this month. I think we're gonna talk
We're
about
gonna have some fun. We are, and I have to say too, I am always open to correction. I just want to say that I think that if there's something that we either got wrong or need to be enlightened on, that I do not profess to be the most knowledgeable person, but I do profess to be the most curious. So I am very
morons. Yes. Let's make that clear. Let's put that right out there.
Yeah, we have no idea. Yeah, we have no clue.
Two dummies, from the coal region who did a do a podcast talking about world events and basic witches and Taylor Swift and all the important stuff. So please, if you're coming to us for any sort of advice, whether that be medical advice, life advice, as a news outlet, you're barking up the wrong tree here.
Yes,
we're just here for a good time, as they say, amidst the collapse
before the camp, before the Gestapo shows up and throws us in the back of the van. We might as well have some fun, right? So next time, maybe it'll be a little colder. Maybe time for. I did have pumpkin spice cappuccino from my local coffee place, but I did not have a pumpkin spice latte. So very important distinction there. So.
Yeah, I really need to break the seal for this season. I haven't had a pumpkin spice. I did get some pumpkin beer. They had a buy one get one free on these craft beers. So I got one IPA 6-pack and I got one pumpkin 6-pack. And it's nice. You can really taste the ginger in it. It's a bit spicy. It didn't seem to activate my acid reflux, so that's a good thing because sometimes certain beverages will do that.
Pumpkin does that. Okay, yeah. So, well, I hope everyone enjoys the commencement of the season of the witch. Although we've been bringing in the season of the witch for since fall began. So, but now's the real deal. Like now the sacrifices begin. So this is it.
now
here we are. Mm-hmm.
This is the dark meaty part of the curve. Well, on that note, Karen, I think that will wrap up today's episode. We thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you right here next week on another exciting episode of the Re-Education Camp.